Hi, and welcome back. I'm Chris, and we are taking a look at question 10 in SAT Practice Test 2, Section 4. So here it says a function f satisfies f of 2 equals 3 and f of 3 equals 5. A function g satisfies g of 3 equals 2 and g of 5 equals 6. What is the value of f of g of 3? So when you see this, a lot of times people want to just guess at an answer and move on because they see all of this algebra, which looks like gibberish, in dealing with what we call composite functions. But it's actually going to work very similarly to a lot of math that we already know, which is you're going to start with the parentheses, right? Think of PEMDAS, your order of operations. You do parentheses first. So let's just work on these parentheses and see if we can simplify things a little bit. Here, g of 3. And when you read this, please read this as g of 3. This doesn't mean g3 or g times 3. It's g of 3. When you see a letter and then following it a number included in parentheses, we read that as g of or f of, and it indicates that it's a function. And here, g of 3, let's see if they give us a value for g of 3 that we could substitute. So when you see these questions, just think substitution. And here, they tell us that g of 3 is 2. So we can plug that in, and we could rewrite this. This question is really asking us, what is f of 2? Now, is there anywhere in this question that they give us a value for f of 2? And if we search around, hopefully we can find that they tell us f of 2 equals 3. So we know that our correct answer here is 3. And it's going to be answer choice B, done. And this is a reasonably difficult question if we don't understand composite functions. And a lot of times, a lot of students will guess on this just because it looks visually intimidating. But just keep in mind PEMDAS. Whenever you're dealing with anything in math, if you're given parentheses and you try to simplify what you see in the parentheses first, it'll oftentimes lead you in the right direction. Now let's take a look at question 11. I'm going to zoom out a little bit because this is kind of a long question. So we see this large table here. And then the question reads, Tony is planning to read a novel. The table above shows information about the novel, Tony's reading speed, and the amount of time he plans to spend reading the novel each day. If Tony reads at the rates given in the table, which of the following is closest to the number of days it would take Tony to read the entire novel? So this is a relatively rare example, SAT-wise. And the reason it's rare is because they give a lot of numbers in here, and we don't have to use all of them, which is very rare because usually the information provided is essential. However, we're going to have to sift through this and maybe winnow it down to the necessary information. So let's take a look. They want to know which of the following is closest to the number of days it would take Tony to read the entire novel. So we want to know basically how long is the novel and how fast does he read? Right? Those are two fundamental questions that we would need to know in order to know how long in number of days it would take him to read. So let's take a look. Total number of hours Tony plans to read the novel per day is 3. Is that essential information to this question? And hopefully we would look at that and say, well, yes. Right? If you read for 10 hours a day or 2 hours a day or 3 hours a day, obviously that's going to change the total amount of days it would take you to finish reading a novel. Now let's take a look at this. Number of parts in the novel. Well, it doesn't matter how that novel is broken up, right? It could be broken up into, let's say, parts or chapters in any way, shape, or form. But these kinds of things, for parts and chapters, we actually don't have to worry about for this particular question because that's just the sectioning of the novel, but it's not going to change the reading time. If you take a 1,000-page novel and break it up into 10 chapters of 100, that's not going to change your reading time versus if it was a 1,000-page novel broken up into 5 chapters of 200, right? So the length of the novel matters, but the way it's broken down does not. Here, number of words Tony reads per minute, 250. Yeah, that matters because how fast he reads, right? That's the rate that he reads. And then number of pages and number of words. Well, here this is interesting because both of those could reflect the length of the novel. So let's see what we have that can potentially relate to that. Here, this data piece is number of words that Tony reads. They don't give us a rate in terms of number of pages. So between these two, if we're going to use pages or words to identify our rate, we would use words in this question because they give us a rate for the number of words per minute that Tony reads. So it's really important to recognize that the units need to match in order for us to use those to our advantage to solve a question like this. So now let's see how we can piece these three key pieces of information together. So they want to know how many days is it going to take. Well, in one day, he reads for 3 hours. So let's see if we can start our conversion with that given piece of information. He reads for 3 hours per day. Now, if you notice, this rate for how fast Tony reads is given per minute. So let's see if we can do a conversion here. Let's start with that. 3 hours per day. Well, 1 hour, if we multiply that, is going to be equivalent to, whoops, wow, I wrote that messy. Let's try that again. 1 hour is going to be equivalent to 60 minutes, right? There's 60 minutes in an hour. So if we do 60 minutes per hour and multiply that out, that's going to be 180 minutes per day. So 180 minutes per day tells us how many minutes he's reading. So now let's see if we can convert that into words. Our next conversion unit here, which they say is 250 per minute. So that means if you're doing 180 minutes per day, and then in 1 minute, you're reading 250 words, let's see what that comes out to. And again, we can already tell right away that this is going to be a big number. Luckily, we're in the calculator section, so you can multiply that out. And that comes out to 45,000. And here our hours cancel out, so we're at minutes per day. Here our minutes cancel out, so we're at words per day. He reads 45,000 words per day. Okay. And then they want to know how many days it's going to take him to read the entire novel. We're trying to convert everything into days. So let's take a look at our total number of words. We have 349,168 words to read. And if we're reading at a rate of 45,000 words in 1 day, let's see what that comes out to. And if we do that division, so if you do 349,168 divided by 45,000, you get 7.75. And it's probably 7.6 because it's 7.59 and change. So that would be in terms of days for this. The words cancel out there. So we're left with days. And the key with unit conversion questions, or sometimes you'll hear this referred to as dimensional analysis, but the key with this is that you want to make sure that you're canceling out, and I'm going to color code this a little bit, but you're canceling out units, and you're going to be left with a particular unit. So each time you have what we call a unit change, you're going to be looking at canceling out an undesirable unit in terms of what the question's asking and getting yourself closer to a desirable unit, which is, in this case, they want to know days. So here, once we get to days as our final remaining unit, then we know that that's our final answer. So this would be 7.76 days. And if we look at our answer choices, well, if you're even part way into the 7th day, even if it had come out to be 7.1, if you're into the 8th day, it takes you 8 days to read this novel. So it doesn't really matter if that's 0.76 or 0.23 or 0.48 or 0.59. It's always going to be rounded up to 8 for this question, because that means that it's going to be into the 8th day. And in this case, we know even furthermore that they say closest to, which means you can use traditional rounding. 7.76 rounds up to 8, and this is going to take Tony 8 days to read this novel. Stay tuned, and we will jump into question 12.